by what you accomplish, but by the opposition you have encountered and the courage with which you have maintained the struggle against overwhelming odds. A very good afternoon to this valedictory function. It is my honor to stand before you and introduce the guest of honor for the day, Dr. Sandeep Shastri, Pro Vice Chancellor, Jain University, Director, Center for Research and Social Sciences, and Professor of Political Science, Jain University. Sir has completed his PhD from Bangalore University. He is the Chairman, Drafting Committee and Member Steering Committee, Karnataka State Youth Policy, Government of Karnataka. Apart from various other posts which Sir holds, he is also the Chief Election Analyst, CNN IBN. Sir has to his credit over 10 books, over 40 articles in edited books, and over 75 papers in referred journals, besides popular writings in newspapers. I request the Controller of Examination, Dr. B.T. Venkatesh, to please welcome Sandeep Shastri sir with a bouquet. My words fall short to introduce the Controller of Examination, Dr. B.T. Venkatesh. Sir has completed his MCom, PGDSW and holds PhD in Management. Sir specialized himself in income tax and corporate accounting. Sir was a member of BOS, custodian and member of syllabus committee. Sir is also involved in training many students for various competitive exams. Sir is one of the active member of Ramakrishna Mutt and involved himself in organizing youth convention for college students. A perfect human being known for his simplicity and discipline. I request our center head, Dr. B.A. Vasu, to welcome Sir. Dr. B.A. Vasu, the inspiring source behind all our accomplishments. Sir has been teaching the subject of statistics, mathematics, research methodology for over 18 years. Sir is involved in teaching and research work both in UG and PG. Sir has his MSc degree in statistics, PhD in management. He is a resource person in various educational institutions. Sir has published 5 textbooks and study materials, and he is the principal center head, Jain University, Jainagar. We welcome you, sir. We also have our Misters Lakshmi Narayan sir, who is an alumnus of IIT Delhi and IIM Bangalore. Sir has spent the first 10 years of his career in retail sales, new product development and brand management with Hindustan Unilever, International Best Food and SmithKline Pharma. Sir is presently the Chief Learning Officer, I Nurture Education Solutions Private Limited. We welcome you, sir. Now I request Mr. Mathew Anthony, Academic Head, Marketing, Leadership and Innovation, I Nurture Learning Solutions, to give an overall summary of the 2-day national level conference.
Thank you, ma'am. Dignitaries on the dais, members of the faculty and fellow students. I see myself also as a fellow student, a lifelong learner. And in the last 2 days, I believe what I learned was awesome. And I thought I will take this opportunity to share what happened. Now lots happened. I shan't use 4-letter words. Lots happened. And to summarize that is not going to be easy. So I would welcome at the end of the summary, if any of you who have been through the session are left with certain other impressions which you thought was a great learning for you, I would welcome you to speak up and share those impressions. As you know, the 2-day session started with the invocation. The singing was melodious. I don't know who they were who sang, but it was really nice. We were filled with the presence of the Almighty. And if we were to consider that the 2-day conference went off well, it is only through His blessings and your singing. The welcome address was given by an amazing raconteur. Anybody know who that is? Yeah? Dr. Rajdeep Manwani. There is none other than Dr. Rajdeep. When it comes to regaling us with very insightful humor and dialogue, as the case may be, putting things into perspective. So it's been so wonderful to have him here to give us the welcome address. And his focus in his welcome address was on productivity, and in his inimitable style, of course, he related it to the lighting in the office and how the fairer sex felt that that it didn't quite work for them because it didn't put them in the right light. He also spoke about John Nesbitt and the fact that the attrition levels from a VUCA perspective, if you look at it, is so high for today's employees. Around 8 months, we're dealing with fickle-minded consumers. And we spoke also about default, 1 every minute. That is something that even I hadn't thought happens, but that's the reality out there in the marketplace. And really what he was saying also was to certain set of people, that is you, VUCA or otherwise, there's an expression called, why waste a good recession? So while the world was going through a recession in 2007, 2008, there were certain companies which you mentioned, like Flipkart and Myntra, who couldn't see, right? They didn't see any recession. They just went about setting up their own business. So VUCA or otherwise, business must go on, which was my takeout from what Dr. Rajdeep Manwani said. And that was in the context of the first day that was in the context of the conference on VUCA. As you know, simultaneously, we also had a conference on rethinking language teaching, which was going on. And what I remember of what he said was what his teacher or principal, if I got the name Andrade, told him when he was asked what does he exactly do, and he says, I teach physics, I teach maths, and he says, why don't you teach students, right? So that is my takeout of what he said with respect to rethinking language teaching. This, of course, was followed by an overview by Dr. Tram Baka, where he spoke about the role of English, the vanishing languages, and the conference, I don't know if people are here from the conference or not, was really to debate strategies for preservation of languages that are disappearing. Moving on, we had excellent short films. Do you remember them? The VUCA film, yeah. So next year's Oscars, look out for it. So whoever made those films, congratulations to them. It was very nicely done, considering it wasn't done by Ridley Scott. It was done by students from Jain University. So congratulations to them. On the first day, the guest of honor was Dr. N.V.H. Krishnan, the registrar of Jain University. And Doctor, after welcoming the guests on the dais, really spoke about the history of Jain University, which he likened to the history of New Bangalore. So I understand Jain University started in 1992. And to me, therefore, in a way, he was saying that Jain University is a child of liberalization. When did liberalization happen in this country? 91. Wow, that's a very attentive audience. Yeah, great. Yeah, so child of liberalization. He didn't quite say that. Those are my words. But what he did say is that in the short 22, 23 years, the Jain University has 65 institutions. Coincidentally, it has 65,000 students. It has 3,000 faculty. That's enormous just when you think about it. Awesome, I would say, yeah. And virtually has all disciplines and streams except perhaps for medicine, unless I'm getting it wrong. Yeah, it virtually has everything. And what he also emphasized was the stress on languages in a commerce and management institutes, what was in a sense probably distinguishes it. And when I did see the number of people who turned up for the language conference, you know, it was just saying that anybody who does pay attention and focus on something, others are willing to follow. So congratulations to the people who are there in the language team. He moved on to speak about disruption, and he picked on three things. He says, while we think about disruption, we think, as you saw in the panel discussion, things happening outside technology and so on and so forth, but we know for a fact there's disruption in our own families, right? My children are not like me at all, and thank God for that, right? Yeah, the way my father treated me, and I need to not treat them, you know, there's no treatment involved, they just do what they say that they want. There's disruption over there. And that same disruption and that is moving into the classroom. And as a parent, while I need to deal with those challenges of my children, as teachers, I think you also have to deal with the challenges of some of the students who are sitting here. Yeah, so that's disruption. And then there's a disruption of social order, which is what he was talking about. He spoke about the power of distance, which is collapsing. And of course, he spoke about brands like Nokia. It would just seem like yesterday they were the leaders, and today, hey, what's that? Then he moved on to talking about the Rethinking Language Teaching Conference, and he spoke about ABCD. What is ABCD?
American born, confused desis.
Yeah, you remember that. You've been paying attention. It's American born, confused desi. The point he was making is that if the ABCDs should not be ABCDs, if in their family, if they were given some linkages to their culture, the past that they come from, maybe by speaking the language at home, chances are they will not consider their native land as something distant and foreign, but just the fact that they speak that language at home can make all the difference. And that's something that I took out of that. And of course, he touched on Atikya Khandala and, you know, what the implications of all of that is, and the fact that Indians are more English than the English. Of course, he was contradicted by Dr. Leitron, who who was a keynote address for languages. Moving on, we move to then the keynote speaker, who said that he will not really speak keynote speaker for VUCA. Winning with VUCA, I said, I'm not going to speak about innovation and strategies because the speakers following would do that. But he said in the VUCA environment, what is really needed is the change of mindset and attitude to deal with it. And he was specifically speaking in our context as an educational institution that this is a 400 years old structure. The university system, the way it exists, and he said that came from Harvard. I don't know how true that is, but let's say that is true. It's 400 years. And he gave us an excellent example of a whole semester system, where he says, why does the semester have to start in July and August? He says around the time 400 years back, people were working on the farms, they finished spring and summer, and then they came to study, and we continue with that. But he also said that when he was in Manipal University, took in admission every quarter. So recognizing that, hey, why are we following a particular system, question it, and do what is needed to make learning and teaching simpler, better, more productive, more effective, which is what this conference is all about. He spoke about democratization of aspirations, which was then picked up by other speakers. He also said trends like horses are easy to ride if you're going in the same direction. And therefore, we also need to understand in a VUCA environment, where are the trends, where is it going, and as a university, Are we aligned with it, or are we, buffeting against it? Therefore, he said, clarity of today's challenges and tomorrow's outcome is what we need to keep in mind. He, of course, said people like me, the older generations, are the obstacles to progress. And so true, as a parent, I can imagine that, because we were born in an economy of scarcity. But you, the youngsters here, my children, they're born in an economy of abundance because their parents earn well and they get everything that they want. And so there is this sense of entitlement that has grown in them. I want it now, right? Otherwise, the otherwise never gets completed. So I don't know what that otherwise is, but it's all about wanting it right now. But we could never speak like that to our parents, because even if we spoke, there's no way our parents could give us what we really wanted. Not that there was anything to want, because it didn't exist. Yeah, but today you are living in a world of abundance. So he spoke about that, and therefore the older people being an obstacle. And I'm going to leave off, he said very many things, but he fundamentally said for institutions like ours that teach techniques, not tools. Now, I'm not going to elaborate on that, but if you can just take that out of the talk that he gave, that would be good enough, which is teach techniques, not tools. And he gave us examples of universities who are already doing that. Moving to the keynote speaker for Rethinking Language Teaching, Dr. Vivek Dareshwar. Sorry, I had a problem with that name earlier. So he spoke about something very nice. He spoke a lot, but he spoke about one thing which touched me, which he said you cannot force language on people, which what I think the Karnataka government or most governments tend to do, because our states got divided on linguistic basis, and so everybody feels that language is your identity, which is not the case. He said the way to make a language popular is if the language can allow somebody to see the world. Yes, so why do people do French and German and now Chinese and Mandarin? Because it allows them to see the world, it creates opportunities. So if you have to teach Kannada here, can Kannada expose you to the world? Can it bring out the creativity of the language? And that should be the stress for someone to do a language rather than having it forced on them. That I thought was a great takeout. And post which, of course, the audience dispersed. The Rethinking Language conference was separated from the VUCA conference. So I'm going to concentrate on the VUCA conference, where the first plenary session, I'm just going to summarize very quickly, was led by Dr. Ramakrishnan, who's president, Future Lifestyle Fashions Limited. But that is a company that he's just joined, as he admitted. He was earlier the president marketing of Cafe Coffee Day. And he said, be optimistic, be a pushover. Nobody likes being a pushover. But you're saying, as a company, as a brand, let the consumer push you, right? And he, as a young company, he said they were able to do that. Let the consumer take control. What is CCD's line? Do you remember what CCD's line? Yeah, a lot can happen over a cup of coffee if you give them the freedom, right? So they truly believe that lots can happen over a cup of coffee, which is in a way saying, VUCA, lots can happen, just take it and write it. Yeah, that I thought was a nice part. And the second important point that he was making, become part of the consumer narrative. The brand should become part of the consumer story, the consumer narrative. The days of pushing things onto the consumer is gone. Yeah, you got to ride along with the consumer. And yeah, so that was K. Ramakrishnan, President Future Group, who was speaking on VUCA and services. Moving on to Mr. Venkata Girish, who is head business strategy GMR, and he was speaking on VUCA and the economy with a focus on infrastructure. And I thought at that talk, we got a super bird's eye view of infrastructure, especially in the context of airports. So what I took out about it, you're building an airport and you got to take decision between using marble and carpets. Wow, I thought airports was much more than that. But what he also said is this whole concept of changing tires while you're driving. Have you heard that phrase? Changing tires while you're driving? Yeah, so when he said that, I said that's true, because as someone who flies a lot, used to fly a lot, I'm always walking into airports which are constantly being innovated. right? So you walk in and say, hey, this is something else and something else. But it does not mean that the airport was ever closed down, right? So flights are landing and taking off, but the airport is changing its look. And I think there's a lot for us to learn from people who manage that kind of a project without, of course, there are hindrances, but they still manage it. So that was my takeout, and I think he had lots of examples. I'm sorry, I had to ask him to cut it short, but we would have learned a lot. We'll do a full day session for Mr. Venkatagirish on infrastructure. This was followed by Mr. Lakshmi Narayan, Chief Learning Officer at iNurture. He basically stressed the point that there is tension between three groups of people. Do you remember what the three groups of people are, three stakeholders? Wow, Mr. Lakshmi Narayan, you really made an impression on this audience. Absolutely, between the student, the industry, and the university, there's a tension, and we need to really resolve that. I won't get into what the tension was because you were paying attention to his talk, so I won't get into that. And then there was a whole concept of knowing, doing, and assessment, right? And therefore, how does one resolve the tension is what today's VUCA is all about. And each one of us who are in academics need to think about it a little bit. Then we had the doctoral presentations thereafter, and the feedback that was given by Dr. Vinod Murthy, who's here, and I'm not seeing Professor Dr. Bagali, was so pointed to the people who presented the papers, saying, when you're presenting a paper, you have to have a correlation. What else? Anybody else was listening to them? I think that he spoke about having a hypothesis. And then he spoke about testing the hypothesis. I think you gave your paper and you left the hall, right? And he said, these are the two things which are very important when you're presenting research papers. And I take that you took it in the right spirit. And the next time, and he also said that go back before we publish the paper and get that validation done and complete that exercise. So that was day one. Are we good with day one? Anybody, any impressions that I may have missed out for the benefit of the panel and whoever missed sessions in between? No? Shall we move on? The plenary session the next day, which was an emerging challenges and opportunities in various sectors. That's today, but it seems like some time back, right? Seems like such a long day. It was started by Dr. Senthil Kumaran, who really spoke about VUCA and education. And he basically said, when he goes around educational institutions, he's with the CII, he finds universities are not investing on two things. What were they? People and process. You've been listening, so nice. He says, they don't invest in people because they invest in people, they go somewhere else. Why they don't invest in process, that I don't know. But fact of the matter is that's not the case only with educational industry. It is the case with any industry which does not believe in developing and training because they're afraid that people will move away. So that was a point he made, and he then gave us a formula. What's the formula? Okay, I want to ask you what the 4 A's were. The 4 A's was awareness, assessment, acceptance, and attitude. The 2 I's was institution and individual. And what that will bring about? So he signed off by saying to a question that was asked that stop teaching. Wow. Okay. And then he spoke about Mata Saraswati plus. And what did Dr. Rajdeep Manwani add to it? Why am I here? Shall I go? All right. This was followed by Mr. Sanjeev Rao, Managing Partner Satwa. He teaches at INSEAD. He actually teaches VUCA. And the point that he made is, in India, everyday life is VUCA, right? It took 1.5 days for somebody to say that, but it was said that we live in a VUCA environment every day. And he showed some striking visuals, and the one that struck me the most was that, which one struck you the most? Absolutely right. The bird with the mobile phone inside his stomach. I don't know what was there, but oh, it was terrible. So you and I are doing that on a daily basis when we buy what? We buy a plastic bag, we don't carry a cloth bag, it's all going into the bird. And the bird was in India? Where was it? Fantastic. Okay, so when we step out, that was a question that was asked of one of the speakers to Sanjeev Rao. Don't ask who is going to do this and who's going to do that. Who's going to do it?
Us.
Thank you. So then he spoke about the next 4 billion, the have-nots, which is creating the problems that we have today in the world, which is in France or Copenhagen or wherever else it is. And so he talked about this do-gooder mentality, right? We want to do good, but do the people for whom we are doing good want that done? No. Toilet was one of the key phrases in today's seminar. Yeah, first talked about by Dr. Rasdev Manwani, and then of course by Sanjeev Rao, saying fundamentally we want to build toilets for women, but the women are saying, I don't want these toilets, right? Because I want to go and chat with my friends. That is insightful. Then we spoke about the democratization of information and aspiration, and he also said one thing. He said corporate law, company law today demands, mandates 2% CSR. His point was? So there we go. So move from tactical CSR to strategic CSR, right? And then he ended his presentation with this lovely last visual. What was the book? All right. For the benefit of the members on the dais, the book was If I Were Rain, and the... Okay, you're not audible, so let me say it. The girl who won the prize said, if I were rain, I had go where water cannot be found. I thought that was extremely touching. And he says, educational institutions, please stop giving information. The students already have that. Please give experience, interaction, and knowledge. And then we had Mahmoud Hussein, a very fit man, a marathoner who spoke at VUCA and IoT. It was really an IoT for me. It opened my eyes. Just imagine chairs that tell you how to sit. Yeah, Google, which can find your wallet. Wow, what days are we getting into? IoT will once again help you communicate like your grandmother. I like that, right? The connection that he made with concerns that we have with technology, to saying our grandmothers used to speak to things, and now with plants, plants, and what else? Needle. Wow, he really made an impression on you, right? And we don't speak anymore to anything, not even to our neighbor, right? We are glued to a... Yeah. So he says IoT will actually help you communicate. So then there was a concern about radiation, which I think Sir asked, and his point was, you're already enough radiated, you can't be more radiated. So forget it, let's not even discuss about it. In any case, if there's radiation, these are nanotechnologies, and it's got to be much less. But the point he was making is the inevitability of the march of time and technology. All right, and then were you all here for the panel discussion? Yes. So I'm not going to summarize that other than to say that we had Samuel Selvakumar, who's now a social entrepreneur, earlier the CEO of Vodafone, who said he got into a VUCA environment by making the mistake of joining telecom, and which continues to be in the VUCA environment. And today, if the other speakers spoke about Egypt uprising, social media, it's Sam's creation. He handed over mobile phones to people, and all of these other things have happened. So all of us hear a lot about social media, and that was really touched upon as to what happened in Egypt. But really, what they were all saying, and I'm going to sum up with what Sam said, that human ingenuity will address every VUCA problem. Technology is not going to do it. Human ingenuity will do it. And with that, I'm going to end my session. If anybody would like to add any impression, please say so. Thank you. Any impressions? No? Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Now I call upon Dr. Sandeep Shastri sir to please say a few words.
Distinguished guests on the dais and my dear fellow participants in these two wonderful conclaves. I was so immersed in listening to that spellbound oration we just heard about what happened in 2 days that I actually didn't realize that I have to speak next. Listening to what has happened in the last 2 days, I thought I would just spend a few moments. I promise you a few moments. I'll spend a few moments talking about what I experiences to what I would call